So I was looking at the SAT website the other day, and it said that there were 4 different types of math problems that they expect you to know. And I think it's safe to say I was a little confused. Like, what is advanced math supposed to be? Well, here's one of each type of problem on the SAT so that you'll be ready for anything on test day. So the first type of problem on the SAT is algebra, and here's what the SAT people have to say. They say that algebra measures the ability to analyze, fluently solve, and create linear equations and inequalities, as well as analyze and fluently solve. Okay, they're just repeating themselves. But anyway, the point is you need to know how to do algebra. So here is an example of an algebra problem that will be really important on the SAT. So our goal here is to solve for x, but it's an inequality, not an equation, because we have a less than sign here. So what are we going to do? Well, remember that the goal is always to get x by itself on one side of the equation. So we need to get rid of this -3 and this -2. Now the -3 is more attached to x, and if we divide everything out by 3, then we're going to get fractions and no one wants to deal with that. So let's get rid of the -2 first. To get rid of the -2, we have to do the opposite of minus, which is plus. But we have to do it to both sides of the equation. So the -2 and +2 cancel out. And on the left side, we just have -3x. And on the right side, we're going to keep the sign here. And 10 plus 2 is 12. And now we just have a one-step algebra problem. So because there's no sign between the -3 and the x, that means it's multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. So that means we need to divide both sides by not just 3, but by -3, so that we get rid of the whole thing. And we have to do it to both sides of the equation. So the -3's cancel out. On the left side, we just have x. And on the right side, we have, well, 12 divided by 3 is 4. And we have one minus sign, so the minus sign stays. Now here's the little special rule about having an inequality sign. Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. So this was less than, now it's going to become greater than. And that means our answer is x is greater than -4. Now, algebra is probably like the most common type of problem on the SAT, so make sure you practice it a lot and make sure you're good at doing your algebra problems. All right, the next type of problem is advanced math. So let's find out what that even means. The SAT people say that advanced math focuses on the math you'll need to pursue further study in science, economics, or STEM. And apparently one of the things you need to know for advanced math is systems of equations. So here's a system of equations. This will be pretty important. So the goal of a system of equations is to solve for both x and y. And the only reason we can solve for 2 letters is because we have 2 equations. If we only had 1 equation, we would not be able to solve for 2 letters. So there's 2 ways to do this. There's substitution and elimination. Elimination is almost always better, but substitution, you can do it if you want. I have videos on both if you want to watch those. So elimination, the point of it is to add 2 equations together. If you can immediately add 2 equations together and they eliminate a variable, then good job, you've done it. But if not, you might have to multiply one of the equations by a number. So let's just go ahead and add these 2 equations together and see if we eliminate a variable. So 4x minus 2x, well, 4 minus 2 is 2. So it's going to be 2x. And then here we have plus 3y and minus 3y, and those cancel each other out. Those turn to 0. So we actually have eliminated a variable. And then here we have -1 plus 5. That's the same thing as 5 minus 1, which is 4. Now you might be saying to yourself, wow, that's such a coincidence, but in a real problem, that's not just going to happen to eliminate, right? But the thing with the SAT is the question writers love putting tricks in the problems. So it's very likely that because they really want you to know how to use elimination, they will purposely set it up to be really good to use elimination because they want you to know how to do it. But anyway, let's go ahead and solve for x here. We have 2x equals 4. Remember that this is multiplication because there's no sign. So we have to divide both sides by 2. So the 2's cancel out. On the left side, we just have x. And on the right side, we have 4 divided by 2 because fractions are the same thing as division. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that means that x is equal to 2. But we also need to solve for y. So the way that we solve for y is we just plug in 2 for x into either equation and figure out what y is equal to. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and do it with the top equation so that we don't have to deal with negative numbers. So we're going to rewrite this first equation, but instead of x, we're going to write 2. So let's go ahead and simplify. Here we have 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8, and the rest of the equation will stay the same. And now we need to get rid of this 3 and this 8, and the 3 is more attached to y, so let's get rid of the 8 first by subtracting 8 from both sides. These cancel out. On the left side, we just have 3y. And on the right side, we have -1 minus 8. Think of this as like dollars. You lost $1 and then lost $8, so you're down $9. And now I'm going to move this up to the top because it's getting a little cramped. And as always, this is multiplication, so we need to do the opposite, which is division, and divide both sides by 3. So these cancel out. Here we just have y. And on the right side, we have 9 divided by 3, which is 3, and 1 minus sign, so the minus sign stays. So your final answer is that x is equal to 2 and y is equal to -3. All right, the third type of problem on the SAT is what they call problem solving and data analysis. That sounds scary. Well, let's see. They say it measures the ability to apply quantitative reasoning about ratios, rates, and proportional relationships and other stuff. So basically, it's just analyzing data because it's called data analysis. So here's an example of an analyzing data problem that you might see on the SAT. For this, we have what's called a scatter plot, and we need to figure out what the best equation is to represent this scatter plot. So a scatter plot is basically just when you have a bunch of dots that, like, for example, these would be like data points if you were doing a survey or something. And they don't all fall on the same line, but they look like they resemble a line. Like it's really close to having this linear relationship, basically. So what the question is asking is if we were to kind of just like draw a line, like just fake it and go like this right through the middle. Wow, this is terrible. Then it's asking what would be the equation of that line. So for this, it's really important to understand how the equation of a line works. So all of these equations that we have for options are in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So x and y are basically the points on the graph, like how far left and right is x and how far up and down is y. For slope-intercept form, m is the slope, the slope. Don't ask why we used m. And then don't ask why we use b either, because b stands for boo y-intercept. So I think the most important concept will be the slope. That's basically just how steep your graph is. And the important thing is that if a graph is sloping upward, then it's going to have a positive slope. But if it's sloping downward like this, then it's going to have a negative slope. So if you look at that in the context of this problem, the points are sloping downward as we go to the right. So that means our graph has to have a negative slope, which means that we can immediately eliminate A because it has a positive slope. And I know there's no number in front of X, but that means there's an invisible 1. And 1 is a positive number, so we're getting rid of it. B is fine because it has a negative slope. It has an invisible 1, like before, -1. C we have to get rid of because that's positive 2. And then D we can keep because it's -2. Now to choose between B and D, we could figure out if the slope is -1 or -2. Or we can just look at the y-intercept, which is b. So the y-intercept is basically where it crosses the y-axis, like the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. The y-axis is this big vertical line. It basically tells you how high up or down the graph is. And it looks like it's crossing it at around 2, because we have to go 2 boxes upward. For the y-intercept to be -2, it would have had to go 2 boxes downward, and the line would have had to like cross here or something. But in this case, it looks like our y-intercept is +2, so we can eliminate D, which is a -2, and our answer in this case is B, y equals -x plus 2. So yeah, understanding the equation of a line is really important for the SAT. And finally, we have everyone's favorite category, geometry. Well, and trigonometry, apparently, but I feel like that's not really on the SAT that much. So what do the SAT people have to say about geometry? Barely anything at all, but it's fine. Geometry is still super important, so let's go ahead and go over it. So it tells us that the base of a pyramid has a length of 5 centimeters and a width of 3 centimeters, and it is 4 centimeters tall. What is the volume of the pyramid? Now, before we panic and go, I don't know how to find the volume of a pyramid, well, it's a good thing that the SAT gives you a list of geometry formulas. So if you look at the formula for the volume of a pyramid, it will tell you that the volume is equal to 1/3 times the length times the width times the height. So knowing how to use formulas is really important. Basically, we just replace all of the letters with what we know in the equation. So first of all, do we know what V is? Well, no, because V is for volume, and that is what we're trying to find, right? It says, what is the volume? So we're going to keep the V as V. 1/3, that's just a number, so it's going to stay as 1/3. L stands for length, and we actually do know what that is. It says it has a length of 5 centimeters, so we're going to put 5 here. By the way, I'm going to put these all in parentheses because they're being multiplied together. If we didn't put them in parentheses, then it would just be a really long number. Yeah. We don't want that. Next is W, which stands for width, and we do know the width. The width is 3 centimeters, so we're going to plug in 3 for W. And then finally, we know the height, which is H, and it says it is 4 centimeters tall. It doesn't use the word height, but it still tells us the height because it says it's 4 centimeters tall. So we're going to replace h with 4. Now it's time to simplify what we have here. We need to multiply all of these together to figure out our volume. Now, if you wanted to make this easier, well, you could actually notice that the 1/3 and the 3, those are opposites. So those actually cancel each other out. But you don't technically need to do that. That'll just make your life easier, but I'll do it without it. So it looks like 5 times 3 is 15. So those will combine to become 15. Then we have 15 times 4. If you put that in your calculator, you'll get 60. And then finally, we have 1/3 times 60. Well, multiplying by a fraction like this is the same thing as division. So this is 60 divided by 3, which if you put that in your calculator, you'll get 20, which means that 20 is the volume of this pyramid. Or likely if you're doing like multiple choice, then they'll have units. So it'll say 20 centimeters cubed because volume is always cubed. So now you know how to do all 4 different types of problems on the SAT. But each of those types of problems had many different like subtypes of problems, like as we saw on the website there. So if you want a little bit more practice, then I recommend watching this video right here. And as always, if you have any questions about this video, go ahead and leave it in the comments and I'll be sure to answer your question. Thanks for watching and good luck on the SAT.